The thoughts, views, expressions, and opinions of this podcast, as well as its hosts, are for entertainment, educational, and informational purposes only. We simply want to encourage, shed insight, empower, equip, and inspire those who listen. We are not trained professionals or claim to be. It does not constitute or take place of actual advice from your doctor or therapist. We hope you enjoy the show. Thank you. Dicking around. That's gonna be like the intro to the pod. Yo, check this out.
The scripture says, he that finds a wife finds a good thing. It didn't say he that finds a girl that he's attracted to, who he then begins to date, who he then calls his girlfriend, who he then buys a ring, proposes, and makes her his fiance, who he then marries later, who becomes his wife. You're not a wife when I marry you, you're a wife when I find you. You become my wife when I marry you. But a wife is not the presence of a ring, it's the presence of your character. Too many women want to be married, but you're walking in the spirit of girlfriend. Ask the Lord to deliver you from that spirit and carry yourself like you're already taken. And I promise you, when you carry yourself like a wife, a husband will find you. But if you keep walking like a girlfriend, boys will play with you.
Okay, I'm not saying he's wrong, but at the same time...
Well, he used the scripture Proverbs 18:22 to kind of like, he who finds a wife finds a good thing, according to Proverbs. And then he just went on on this little...
That goes on that whole...
this little tantrum.
But the whole, like, you gotta get out of that spirit of girlfriend. What? What does that even mean?
I think he's talking to the...
Oh, no, I know what he's talking to.
He's talking to a specific demographic of women who are subscribed to the independent, I'm a feminist, I don't need no man, but then they find themselves complaining that they don't got a man because they're living a life or leading a life that's not necessarily biblical. Because unfortunately, a lot of women do play a role of a man when they subscribe to those ideologies.
Well, they've bought into the whole thing of like, yeah, I'm a strong independent woman that don't need no man.
I'm like sinking this couch.
But the thing is, it's like that's the whole new societal thing of like of trying to destroy the family, right? Like trying to get rid of manlyhood.
Yeah.
Which is something that we need because if you've noticed, like in a lot of cultures, once the man disappears, essentially society kind of falls apart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what don't you agree to what Pastor John Gray said?
Okay. Well, first off, it's John Gray.
That's not use pre-judgmental.
Oh no! It's not pre-judgmental.
Yeah.
If you call Caleb right now, and he will tell you about like the 2-3 hour conversations we've had about this. If you've not watched, you can find it on YouTube.
Well, I know who John Gray is.
No. I'm saying no. There's a specific thing. It's called the Elephant Room.
Right.
It's literally. It's an.
Well,
old,
Stephen Furtick was involved.
It's an older video series.
Yeah.
But when you kind of listen to what he says, I'm kind of like, what?
Yeah.
What are you talking about, bro? Like that's why, like, when certain pastors kind of like, I'm like, okay, you can be hype, whatever, but like, are you really pushing people more towards Christ? No, he's not. Like, sorry, in a lot of his beliefs, especially with the whole triune God thing, like, can't get behind it. Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
All right. I feel you on that one, but he does speak like certain truths in that I guess you could call it like a rant, because again he's speaking to a younger generation who are subscribing to this new age modernism about how they should navigate through relationships and how they should court and date, and sometimes men and women subscribe to this red pill theology that isn't necessarily in a macro level is necessarily a net positive. It's more a bit. It could get a bit divisive. It could get a bit abrasive, and it could.
What do you mean by red pill, though? I want to define it for everyone who's listening.
Like the red pill community would say, well, don't get married unless X, Y, Z. They look at a marriage as a business transaction versus more of a covenantal transaction. I think there is a business transaction in it. I do believe in that.
I mean, beneficial. It's like it's a life hack.
I feel like it's looking more and more like that.
Yeah.
Like a business transaction.
Right.
I mean, like in the past, it was more so, we're soulmates.
Mm-hmm.
We're one under God. Like,
it's covenantal. Like how our parents grew up.
Exactly. Yeah. Now it's totally different. I feel like that's why there's more and more divorces. Yeah,
for sure. Absolutely. I mean, the divorce rate as is right constituted now, it's not 50%. That was a projected thing, but it is 42% in the Christian community, and that's even in itself too high. Knowing that what we know, what's in Scripture, what's biblical, how men should lead in a marriage, and things like that. 42% at the end of the day. Matt Walsh even said it. I think you were in that.
He doesn't.
You were in that podcast with me with Gabe. Yes. Shouts to Gabe.
Wait, that's not Matt Walsh. That's not Matt Walsh.
That's Matt Walsh.
Fun fact: I am not Matt Walsh, or nor do I have any relation to Matt Walsh.
I was excited about this podcast.
Although I would love to, because he's
hilarious.
He is beyond hilarious.
Yeah,
his sass is through the roof, and I love every second.
Yeah, this is that guy.
Marla sends me videos.
That guy's sarcasm. Like I even said it off camera. That guy's sarcasm is like top tier.
It is. It's
top tier. He's amazing.
It's so and because he's not monotone, but it's funny. He doesn't really have any voice inflection. Mm-hmm. And so it all kind of sounds the same. So you have to actually, so you have to listen to him. But but it's sometimes not just the way he sends it. Sends it. Yeah, he sends it all right. Yeah. The way that he says it, it's like you have to really pay attention to what he's kind of saying. So like when he does an illusion, it's gonna make you laugh because it sounds like he's being serious, but then you realize, oh wait, he's not actually being serious.
Yeah, he's hilarious. But yeah, he stands very strong on the fact that the institution that America calls the institution of marriage is under attack because of the narratives that are being pushed through Hollywood, through other people's platforms, like these red pillars, and then the red pill community pushing certain narratives, the Andrew Tates of the world pushing certain narratives that he masks it with positive biblical things, but in the underbelly of it all, like he pushes like very narcissistic, misogynistic way of treating women and seeing women as a come up, because it's no secret. I mean, it's been exposed that Andrew Tate did have women that he was coaching or managing their OF platforms. Yeah. And I have to say OF because YouTube monetizes and I can't say certain things.
Gosh darn it, YouTube.
So the OF pages that these women will have, Andrew Tate would, it's almost like exploiting them for $1 to making $1. Yeah. And obviously that's not biblical. Obviously that's not Christian. Like obviously that's not God honoring. But young people in this generation will subscribe to Andrew Tate because he's cool. He drives a Bugatti. He has the women, and he stands up for men, and he has a voice for the voiceless, and he's made out to be this superhero. But at the end of the day, he's prescribing to the younger generation of men these types of ideologies that essentially can pervert a man's vision when it comes to how to treat a woman and how to even approach a relationship, and let alone approach a marriage. I'm old school. You and I are Colombian. Mm-hmm. We have like that same culture. And you mentioned it earlier that marriage, when our parents were, even when our grandparents were growing up, it was based from a covenantal, getting together type of relationship. One under God, with
we're in, we're in.
Yeah, once you're in. We're gonna. They take the vows very serious.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And nowadays it's completely gone like a different way.
Right.
So now I feel once it gets to that point, mm-hmm. I do think that I feel like it's a wave.
Yeah.
And I feel we're gonna get back to that.
Yeah.
Which. The more
who do you think is realizing it faster, men and women? And this is just a question to start conversation. Who do you think is figuring out faster, men and women?
I think men.
Mm-hmm.
Say it louder for the people to.
The men. I really do.
The boys.
See, I think females are starting to come around where they're feeling empowering.
Yeah.
They kind of want to be more like men, and I feel like the woke is push. The community is pushing for weak men, because I feel if there's weak men, then the man or the man of the house or this, I feel like feminism has changed a lot.
Right.
And now it's like we want to run it, and then you get that unbalance.
Right.
It's not. I feel like it's unnatural. At least for me.
Yeah.
For me, it's very unnatural.
Right.
To feel. In my term, where it's less manly, like I want to be the man of the house.
Right, because we're essentially born to be the leaders. That's just embedded in our DNA. That's embedded in Bible. That's Correct. Something that's biblical. And I think although men are coming around to realize, we got to step up, because there's a lot of crap going around in Hollywood, in other platforms, in social media. Men are coming around, but women, bro, there's some women, especially the early feminine movement, that are realizing it now in 2023 that, wait, we made an enemy out of men when we shouldn't have made an enemy out of men. And you know who brought that out? I don't know if you're familiar with Patrick Bet. What's his name? Davis.
Patrick Bet Davis.
Patrick Bet. What's his name?
Excuse me, everyone. We're just gonna go to our phone for
Patrick Bet David.
There's always a huge
push. The movement of feminism is the ultimate example.
When feminism becomes so extreme, there's going to be a pushback.
Yep.
When you because then men get on a defensive end.
Yeah, for sure.
Instead of working together.
Yeah.
To bring this idea where
we can be. Years old?
Yeah, Patrick Bet David.
He's young.
Yeah. I actually found a video of him. Real quick, we're gonna look what he said about.
I don't know who he is. So
that guy.
Okay, you know if you've seen social media at all.
I'm
all right, so check this guy. This is what he said about feminism, and the early on feminist activists, early activists that started the feminism, are now coming around that they're realizing what they're realizing now in 2023. Check this out.
The movement of feminism is the ultimate example of not choosing your enemies wisely. You chose men as being the enemy. 40 years later, 50 years later, you're 65 years old, single, not married, no kids. You're living in an apartment or a condo with a dog or a cat. That's all you ever talk about. And you're lonely, and you're sitting there saying, I was wrong. Men are not the enemy. But guess what? That movement stole 50 years of your life. And how painful that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that sums up the conversation that we were trying to have anyway. But yeah, that's literally what it is. And then women, to answer your question, because you posed the question to start a conversation, I think, yes, in part, Alex is right. By the way, this is Alex.
How long we're into this podcast?
I'm here with. Well, this is episode. I hate intros. You know, I hate intros. But
yeah, I know. But for people who have never heard the podcast before, you need to let them know, bro.
Yeah, Alex. My buddy Alex. I haven't seen Alex in forever. We always kept in touch through social media. We always kept tabs with one another. But it's been a while. I know his cousins, his family, so I'm very, very well acquainted with Alex and who he is and who he's grown to be. Proud of you, bro. And I'm very, very thankful that you want to be part of the pod and just have really healthy, manly conversation. This is a man podcast today. We have got Tyler in the house, my resident co-host. He's been here since day one. And this is episode 89, actually.
It is 89.
It is episode 89.
We are 11 away from 100 episodes.
Yeah, we're really proud of what we're doing here.
That's awesome, dude. 89 podcasts?
89 episodes.
That's wild.
You would think you'd run out of things to talk about,
right.
But we're still here.
Yeah, the content keeps on coming. The conversations keep on coming. Thanks to you guys with the DMs and the questions that you guys ask. And,
do you have any you want to throw out?
I think I have some leftovers from last week can
I see them before?
Yeah. Some pod questions that we went over.
How did you guys even get into podcasting?
So actually there's a little backstory to this. So I actually was thinking about doing a podcast for a long time. I actually had recorded a podcast with Franklin and oh my gosh, why am I blanking on his name? I'm so sorry. Jake. Franklin and Jake. Big Jake.
Oh, Big Jake, yes.
Big Jake.
He moved to Ohio.
Did he move to Ohio?
Yeah, I think.
Oh, wow. Oh, cool. Well, Jake, I hope you're doing well, bro.
Yeah.
So I was going to, it was going to be like, I think I called it like I forget what I called it. It was like non-conforming Christian podcast or something along those lines. Something stupid, right? And I recorded a podcast because it was right after the BLM riots when all that was going on. And it was just an honest conversation. It was actually a really honest conversation about race. It was very good. It's never going to see the light of day. Ever. Not because it wasn't good, but because the audio sucks so bad.
Yeah, when the audio is not on,
when the audio is not good, there's no way for me to test it.
Right.
And so whatever, it turned out. The conversations were awesome. And like my respect for both those guys went through the roof. And so then, but I was also kind of getting more involved in a particular church world. So I was kind of like, maybe I probably shouldn't be doing something like this if I want to be friends with people.
Yeah.
Not that I was going to think anything crazy, but then all of a sudden Javi comes to me and was like, "Yo, bro, I'm starting a podcast." I'm like, "Oh."
Yeah.
Hey, I have things. You want them?
Yeah.
Like literally, I just gave him my podcast stuff. And so then it was just like, oh, let's test it. We just sit and then he came over to my house. We just sat in the living room. We were having a nice little whiskey. And I was like, let's just try it.
Yeah.
Record.
I forget what mics we use, but we use like these
They were the really crappy ones.
Little raggedy crappy mics. But
listen, Amazon, like $20.
Yeah. But now we got these Shure mics, and they're coming right along, and they're durable. They're definitely durable. They're built.
They'll last you for a while.
The setup. So.
Yeah, but I appreciate you coming. Appreciate you coming through and your willingness to just have conversation about the topics that are on hand, and even like the topic of faith. I think that a lot of men in 2023, they're even kind of like drawn back to talk about faith because they feel like, oh, it's probably a topic that I don't want to touch because of the reaction people may get. And I don't think we should walk around on eggshells when it comes to our faith. I think we should walk very bold with our faith, but not in your face where it's disrespectful, but being apologetic about your faith because I know that you had quite a walk in your life. You came from a pretty debaucherous life, party life, just like myself. Promiscuity was present, drug use was present. I was around people that were, subscribing to that. Alcohol abuse and just partying and getting hammered. I was there. You were there too. But then for God to kind of move in our lives and in your life specifically and show you the light, essentially, to get you to where you are today. All praises go to God. So praise God for that, for sure. But as far as the conversations that I wanted to have today was basically a conversation about faith, relationship, and marriages, right? Faith, relationship, marriage. Faith, relationship, marriage. That was kind of like the theme that I had in my head. And because we are three men here in the room that haven't lost hope in marriage, right? We haven't lost hope in marriage. I still believe in marriage, even though the marriage rate is at 42%, which I feel is a little high for Christian in the Christian world. Because if we truly want to call a spade, and in theory, it should be, in a perfect world, obviously, it should be at 0%. But in a broken world, it should be at maybe 25%. But because it's at a 42% rate, I feel that it's a little bit high.
Not to burst that bubble, but apparently recent surveys and studies suggest that approximately only 20 to 25% of Christian marriages end in divorce.
Okay.
I actually just looked into that not that long ago.
Yeah.
It's statistically.
I'm going by with statistics that Matt Walsh shared on his pod, but he was doing it with the secular.
Yeah, because even with the secular world, the secular world is higher, but it's known that marriages last longer and marriages are healthier and there's less divorce rate amongst Christians because there is that dedication to God first. There is that dedication to that covenant. That an honoring of that covenant. That this is the way that it was meant to be. This is how it was created. This is how God set up the world to begin with this in mind, with this covenant, with this very relationship in mind, knowing how beautiful it is, knowing how it's supposed to. I mean, like if it does things the way it's supposed to do things, yes, marriage is not easy. No one has ever said marriage is easy, right? But if you do things the way it's supposed to be done, it's way easier to do it than to do it under the. It's easier to do it with God than it is to do it without God. Yeah, because without the thing that actually unites the covenant. Because even when you even if you it's like even between like countries, right? There's treaties, like there's certain things that unite together. Without that one thing, the whole treaty is bust, right? That if you want to say treaty or covenant or relationship, without God, it's just a bust.
Yeah. I'm actually getting married.
You're engaged.
Oh, congratulations!
So
I've never met you before. So congratulations.
So case in point here, Exhibit A for those who are watching on YouTube. We have a man in the house who believes in marriage because he's engaged. So congratulations to you.
I'm actually super excited.
Yeah.
When you all get married?
November of next year.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So because me and Tyler here that's our goal. Our goal is to get 100%. Engaged. Our goal is to have a healthy relationship. Our goal is to get married. How was the journey? Like? I'm sure it came with its ups and downs. It came with its trials and tribulations. What made you pop the question?
What was the wait? What was the moment you knew? When did you hit the God nod?
Fast.
Did you really?
Yeah, dude, I did.
How was that like?
It's hard to explain, man. But I'm excited about it because we're both. We go to church together. Okay. I feel like we're both on the same level as apart. Yeah. Our focus, our goals. We both see that this marriage is under God. Before I used to not see it that way.
Wow.
And bro, it's smooth sailing.
Really?
When you said like the ups and downs, I haven't had the downs.
Wow.
So, and I don't want to look at it and I just want to focus on the ups. Yeah. And so far, it's been amazing.
Right.
And I feel like every relationship has its downs.
Right. Absolutely.
We've had maybe a bump. I'd call it a bump.
Yeah. A little hiccup. Hiccup. Yeah.
I mean, you all are perfect.
Yeah. As close as perfect as it can get. So it's amazing.
That's a blessing.
Awesome.
That's awesome. And what's her name? I'm sorry.
Monica.
So shouts to Monica.
Monica,
you're great. So you guys go to church together. You guys have the same.
Hold on, wait. Please tell me you go to church more than 2 times a week.
A month.
Sorry, a month. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, my time. 2 times a month.
We go every Sunday.
Good.
I mean, I was telling him I actually haven't gone for the past 3 or 4 weeks.
You heathen.
we just moved. We just bought a house together, and then shortly after, we went out of the country. We went to go watch the Brazil and Colombia game.
Yeah.
And so we missed a couple Sundays, but I went this Sunday.
Yeah, I miss Sundays too. Like especially when you're on the go and you have vacation time, and you miss a Sunday here and there. But I think the consistency of what happens in the home, because I pray, I try to pray, I try to have my prayer life in order. Sometimes it gets a little sloppy because of life be lifing. But I think that what happens at the home is very intimate, relational wise with the Father, right? With our Heavenly Father. And I think that you're not a Christian because you go to church every Sunday.
No.
Because I've seen Christians that go every Sunday that lead a sloppy life.
Sloppy.
And
That's like saying every person that has a tree and opens presents is a Christian. Because a lot of people just do it for
the culture.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, especially in America, I think the Christians get a bad rep because Christmas has been so commercialized, and we live in a capital capitalistic.
Did you assume my religion? Why didn't you just say happy holidays?
Yeah, you get those conversations too, where it gets kind of
shamelessly say Merry Christmas.
Yeah,
piss off all your relatives. I'm just kidding. Don't do that.
But it's a conversation starter. It's a conversation starter when people kind of push back on that. It's like, oh well, I don't celebrate Christmas, and I would get pushback because I work at the courthouse. Yeah. And around this time of year, when I'm taking care of a customer, I always say, Merry
Christmas.
Yeah, we got to call them customers, even though they're former convicts or heathens, as Tyre likes to call them.
I do.
No, I'm just kidding.
But
I work at the Circuit Criminal Department in the Palm Beach County Courthouse, and yes, our clientele, if you will, for a lack of a better term, is former felons and I told you this off camera, that has done like a 5 to 10 year bid, and now they want to get their life in order, they want to get their license back, and yeah, so we deal with a lot of that. And around this time of year, I always say, Merry Christmas. Mm-hmm. And I remember one time, I believe it was like 2-3 years ago, this one guy's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't celebrate Christmas." So respectfully, I said, "Well, I do, and I wished you a Merry Christmas out of the kindness of my heart, and I didn't mean to offend you, and I most certainly didn't mean to say it in a condescending way." Yeah. Because he took it like that, and you know what? It actually started a healthy conversation amongst two people that didn't know each other. I didn't know this person, and he just came to me seeking my services because his license was suspended, and he had a couple felony cases that he had 5 or 6 years ago that he's trying to pay back, because you do have a financial obligation when it comes to these cases. Yeah. You do the time, yes, but they don't understand that you still have a financial obligation when it comes to these cases, and failure to oblige by those financial obligations, your license will ultimately be affected. Exactly. And and it'll get suspended. So he didn't understand that, and then we finished the conversation by saying, "Hey, I respect that you don't have a belief system, but I said that because I wanted to wish you a Merry Christmas, only because Christmas is a time of reflection for me, because I am a Christian. I reflect on the birth of Jesus, and that's basically my belief system. And the fact that I was so authentic with this guy, and I wasn't being so brash with him, and I respected his stance on it. He actually received what I had to say about Christmas. Yeah.
And I feel like most people would, as long as you're not trying to push a belief on them.
Yeah, because
most people would be respectful.
Some people get triggered when they hear the word Jesus, like Jesus Christ, or the word Jesus as God. Some people will get offended. It's just depending on who you're talking to. You just never know who you come across, and in that one name, Jesus, can trigger someone and send someone to a very dark place, because A, they're an atheist, B, they were burnt by the church, C, they walked away from the church, they hate Jesus because of a traumatic experience that they might have experienced at a church, and that is unfortunate. That really is unfortunate. But
or they've had people try to really force it down their throat, and that's not the way to go about it either.
Correct. Yeah. But it's good that, so full circle coming around with what you said about you going to church and you and your girlfriend, or your fiance now, going to church, and there's no division amongst what you believe in. Because sometimes I remember younger, I would date, and I would date outside of my faith. I remember years ago, I dated someone who came from a Jewish family, but she wasn't a practicing Jew. Yeah. So she wasn't practicing her faith, and she was very worldly, lived in a very worldly view, very secular view of the world. And I was dating her, and I was just getting my feet wet when it came to Christianity. So I was still kind of a baby Christian. And that really hindered that really hindered.
Sorry, I hate that terminology.
Yeah.
Baby Christian. That's so I'm sorry, it's insulting.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. People use it. I get it.
I'll do you one better. In my infancy of my belief of early on in my belief, I was very green. If I'm going to use those terms, I was very green. I didn't know much of Bible, didn't know much of Scripture, didn't know much how to apply Scripture, and I was dating someone that was not even Christian, so that kind of set me up for failure. And needless to say, because she wasn't all for that, and I was kind of trying to find my way in my faith, it kind of stunted my growth because I was involved with that individual.
Yeah, I completely understand.
Yeah,
I've been in there. I've been there as well. I think when you find that person and you both have the same belief, it's you kind of are on the same path, and it's a lot easier to move forward.
Right.
And you understand each other better.
Yeah.
You get along better when you do have your disagreements. I feel like since we're both going the same way, it's a lot easier to come back down in that same place and meet them where they're at and have a good place together.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, so now it's my turn to pose a question for both of you guys. Why do you think in this now generation do you find guys more push back on the idea of marriage? Why do you feel why do you feel like that there's pushback on marriage now? Is it Hollywood? Is it the red pill community? Is it what we see in social media? Is it the OF movement?
I think it's all that.
All the above, right?
I think it's all the above, but I'm also going to throw something else that we haven't. It's been a while since we've talked about on the podcast. Yeah. But I also kind of want to say it's purity culture too, because I was having a conversation with Marla and then one of her sisters the other day about purity culture. And her sister sent us some stuff about that. I always get sent like the churchy stuff. It's like, what do you think about this? Here. But the purity culture, it's like you essentially try to educate an entire generation where you put this thing called purity in the place of Christ, where purity was above Christ essentially. And so you put it on the shelf. And so then, like, you have an entire generation that's like, oh, you can't lust, you can't do this, you can't do this. So you essentially have this entire generation that, like at the heart of it, I think they were trying to do their best to, like, help people not. Because, of course, it was, like the 90s when this really took off, which is when we were growing up, really affecting us of, like, how we process, like, sex, how we process relationships. It's like yes, like of course the expanding of the church culture at that time as well was like, hey, you do things in this particular order or you don't do them at all, and or you're betraying God and all this stuff. Insert whatever religious zealot type of conversation you want to kind of put in there. But you have purity culture setting the standard of like girls have to dress super modestly. You have to, and then kind of put more so emphasis on the girls than more so on the women than necessarily the men. Sometimes they hide behind boys will be boys type of thing. So there really wasn't any real accountability there. Yeah. And I think we've gotten in that regard somewhat kind of comfortable where men can sometimes avoid that accountability and kind of, obviously us guys know that sometimes we can just disassociate emotions from ourselves and be able, and of course when you put such an emphasis on one thing, we're kind of like, bro, like I don't care about that anymore. Yeah. You know what I mean? But I think that's part of that pushback, but I think from that, because the world has swung in such an almost drastic direction of like anti-family, and then of course the feminist movement, whatever you want. I mean, of course, I'm trying to like paint a bigger picture here, but I think part of it is also, I think a big component of that is purity culture. Yeah. And with that being said, there was little accountability to it, but then you can kind of run away when you can, or run away when you want to. But also, I think there's also so many other options out there in the way of like, you can, I think social media hasn't helped.
No,
at all.
Yeah.
We talk about it so much on this podcast. Yeah. Social media hasn't helped. But that's just kind of where I'm kind of seeing part of why guys are kind of so adverse to it. But then it's also on the other side of that, it's like because divorce is so high, because a lot of men are usually blamed as the problem. We don't want to put ourselves through that. What do you talk about? Like, I mean, even for myself, like my parents are divorced. I'm very public with this information. It's pretty freaking obvious. I know for me, even though I was excited about relationship, I was never looking forward to the next step.
You just wanted to park there.
I wanted to just be like, oh, I have a relationship. Okay, this someone makes me happy. I can do whatever. Da 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 da.
Yeah.
But there was never a point where I was comfortable with moving forward. And because, like, I mean, even just the very idea of marriage scared the heck out of me.
I feel like it scares men more than it does women.
Absolutely.
Because women have everything to gain. And men typically have everything to lose.
Yeah,
I feel like the courts always
side with the female.
I wasn't going to try to go that direction, but
but I like that you are going in that direction. So talk about that. Let's talk about that for a little bit.
Well, when you ask, I feel like when you ask anybody, people don't see really. They say it's a piece of paper,
right?
You know what I'm saying? Because that's all they're seeing.
It's transactional.
It's a transaction and a piece of paper. But there's a lot more to marriage, and that part has gotten lost. Yeah,
the spiritual side of it.
Exactly. So
I also think that just in general, the sanctity of marriage is gone.
Yeah,
like because I'm not saying like the same thing with purity culture, but like it used to be looked at as this thing that everyone wanted to strive for, everyone wanted to have. Everyone was like, oh my gosh, like I want to be married, like I want to have that type of relationship with somebody.
Yeah, and I feel that even if we're talking about people that aren't Christians, there is still that. Let's say we're soulmates, or we have that special connection, or that something more than just that piece of paper. But yeah, definitely, where people are getting away from the God aspect of marriage, and we need to bring that back, because the more I feel like divorce rates would drop.
Absolutely, tons. When there's a biblical baseline infused in the relationship.
Exactly, and we need to stop seeing it as a piece of paper.
Yeah,
because it's not just.
It's more like literally taking the vows that you are taking when you are coming into a marriage seriously, like taking that as a sacred vow that you are going to comply with till death do you. It's a
higher calling.
Right.
That's really what it is.
Yeah.
We've lost that drive to want to have the higher calling because we've gotten so comfortable with being okay with being second, being treated a certain way. Like, I mean, guys are meant to carry a heavy load. We're meant to carry that, but we're also meant to throw it on immediately on Christ when we have such a heavy load.
Yeah.
But we don't have that anymore. Right. There is no more of that, and I think that's part of the reason why we're having so many issues.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be real. I think we're having so many issues. I mean, you see single mothers, you see that because again, it goes back to you don't want to take responsibility for your actions because actually there was a funny story I saw on TikTok where it was 6 to 8 women had the same baby daddy.
Yeah.
But he never stuck around for any of them.
Yeah, I seen that.
Didn't stick around for any of them. I'm kind of like, how could you just do that? But because there's no responsibility to be taken. There's no higher calling because it's all that instant gratification that essentially was told that, oh, this is going to kill you. This is going to kill you from beauty culture, whatever. Yeah. But then also nowadays social media, it's like, hey, she's hot, have said, kind of fall into that.
Yeah.
And so, kind of going off on it, it's like, I can tell you from my own personal story, my dad got screwed hard. And I mean, luckily, looking into the future, my dad took it with grace and humility. I respect my dad, even though he annoys me a lot of times. I'm like, Dad, oh my gosh, please shut up. I respect him to death.
Yeah.
I respect him to death. And then I think what part of it, what kind of woke me up a little bit was my dad and my wonderful stepmother. I really do mean wonderful. My stepmom, Christine, is an amazing woman. Her parents embraced me like their own grandchild. There was no like, oh, you're not really our problem. You're not really our grandchild. It's like, no. My grandfather bothers me all the time when I don't want to be bothered. He calls me. He's like, how's your faith doing? How's this? How's church? Yeah. Like writing me hard. And I'm very thankful for that. But I saw court documents. My parents made a bold move and showed me court documents. I say my parents. When I say my parents, I really mean my dad and my stepmom. They showed me the court documents of all the litigation between my dad and my mom.
Your biological mom?
My biological mother. My dad and my biological mom. And it opened my eyes. I was like, whoa. And I remember there's one point I spoke up because there's something in me that knew that because my mom tried to take me away from my dad as much as humanly possible. And I'm not just trying to sit here and bash my mom, but it's like, this is a typical picture of what happens when there was a child in a marriage that ends in divorce. Yeah. This is a typical picture.
In America, especially. In America, yeah.
And so my mom tried to take me away as much as humanly possible. And it's only because of my voice that I got more time with my dad. Whereas like, I want to see my dad more. I want to see my dad more. Like, it got so bad. Like, the judge is like, we're fixing this today. Yeah. Today. And, but I'm very thankful for that. But like, my dad is I consider my dad to be a man's man. I mean, not just because of how massive he is. I can still bench press a truck. His
dad's big.
He's a big boy.
Yeah.
Good old Papa Squatch. But like, he took all that with humility and grace, with a manliness that you don't see nowadays.
You don't. A lot of divorces, guys end up depressed. I remember seeing a story. I forgot the gentleman's name, but he was on a podcast, and he talked about how he was in a very dark place because essentially his wife at the time was asking and demanding, requesting for divorce papers, that I don't want to be with you. And she had literally no leg to stand on. There was no infidelity. There was no foul play. He was actually working. It's not like he was a bum. This is all according to him. Like,
so she had somebody on the side, maybe.
Probably. I mean, it got to a point where she just didn't want to be with him anymore. And when he was talking about the relationship that how it ultimately ended, it ended with him almost committing suicide. And it touches me in a way because I'm one to stand up for men, especially Christian men like yourself and like Tyler. I'm one to stand up and be a voice for those men because I feel that you said it earlier that the men, unfortunately, do get the short end of the stick. And they're the ones that have everything to lose when it comes to approaching marriage. Yeah. Because there is that moment, and I don't wish this on anybody, that you're gonna get that knock on the door. Hey, babe, we need to talk.
Yeah.
And then she wants to sit you down and say, not feeling it anymore.
And I feel like it gets pushed more and more with this. We don't need a man kind of mentality. Yeah, that's going on right now.
The feminism.
Yeah. Because that has totally changed a lot. I feel nowadays.
Also, like the proximity, right? Like what we're close to in our social circles. Can you think of like at least two of your boys right now that kind of push back on marriage? Do you have like at least one or two that are? That's my point.
My boy actually asked me. He's like, how do you know when you want to get married to somebody? He has a huge
he's very skeptical.
He's very skeptical. He doesn't want to get married. Well, he doesn't see
the whole idea of marriage.
He doesn't see the benefit of being married anymore.
And there's a lot of guys like that are very skeptic of because it's an idea, right? Like, the idea of being married. It becomes very scary because of us men naturally, I feel like we hate rejection. Like, let's just call it what it is. Absolutely. Like, I can look back in my life on the moments that I was rejected, and in those moments, not that I've ever been clinically depressed, but I've been in some dark places, bro, where if I probably would have gone to a doctor, I might have been clinically prescribed depression medication. I just never went, but I've never been clinically depressed. But I remember in moments in my life where I experienced that type of rejection, where I was self-medicating myself. And when I say self-medicating, it's the substance, right? Yeah. The drugs, the alcohol especially. And alcohol on my father's side runs pretty heavy. So I've seen that firsthand. Mm-hmm. My dad's brother was a huge alcoholic. Like, he struggled with it his entire adolescence, his entire adult life. He just struggled with it. My dad, to a certain point, he struggled with alcoholism to a certain point until he got his act together. And praise God, he was able to raise me and my brother and things of that nature. But I say all that to say that it's just really hard for men to carry on with that idea, because we burden ourselves. We carry these burdens that sometimes we don't have a business carrying these burdens. And when we don't have a faith-based belief system, believing in the Lord and Savior that we can go to and give those burdens to relieve ourselves from that pressure, dudes are going to fold.
Yeah, they won't be scared of, let's say, rejection, mm-hmm. or be afraid to step into the unknown.
Right.
When you have that and you both have faith, mm-hmm. there's really nothing to be scared of.
Right.
You both can accomplish
right
a lot more than one person could accomplish. That is with that type of mentality.
Yeah. When did you have a moment of clarity where you said, I'm going to stop living this way and live more towards Christ? Like, when did you have that moment?
That's a long story. You want to hear it?
Sure. Oh, that's why we're here.
Bro, we got time.
We got time, bro.
Oh man.
Because I met you when you were running pretty worldly, and you were not very Christ-like when I met you. The party scene. We were younger, obviously.
Yeah, I was a promoter back then.
Yeah, you were a promoter back then. Club promoter. For those who don't understand what a promoter is, for those listening. A club promoter, yeah.
No, I think it was in my high school days. It was being surrounded in the wrong crowd.
Yeah.
I went to a tough high school. And in my time, in like 2001, mm-hmm. I'm older than I look, you guys.
Yeah. Well, the grays in your beard shows that you have a lot of wisdom.
That's the wisdom. Yeah.
There's a Bible verse that says that.
So. Yeah.
So out in the wrong crowd, being in the wrong crowd,
yeah,
I used to get into a lot of fights.
Right.
The drugs were everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And in my early 20s, I had a friend who, I didn't know about this. This was when pills was first starting to come up. Like Oxy.
Early 2000s. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember.
He started. He was selling them. He was making tons of money, and being raised in that type of environment, it's kind of like all you know. It's not all you know. I mean, your parents teach you. I had great parents, amazing parents, but I was always out on the street. I was never home. Nowadays, everybody's just home on electronics. Mm-hmm. I was in sports, so I'd come home, play sports, and be in the street the whole time. And I actually saw how much money he was making, and I started selling pills myself, and making tons of money. I was always wise when it came to. I've always been a good salesman, so I was always wise in how I would run what I would call business in the streets. Mm-hmm. And I was making tons of money and ended up getting caught. And I actually I haven't told. This is why I was so nervous coming here, because I haven't told. I don't think a lot of people don't know.
Right.
I went to prison for a year, and it was tough. Growing up, my parents had faith in God, and I used to go to a Catholic church. I had my first communion, so I turned back to God when I was in prison.
Wow.
And had Bible studies like every Tuesday, and then Sunday we would go back to church. It was a very dark place.
Yeah.
But I read the Bible from front to back. I think twice.
Cover to cover.
Wow. But it was, I remember it so vividly because it was emotional, in a good way.
Right, like very spiritual.
The moment, we had to go. I was in a maximum security prison, so we had to go through multiple gates, and I remember we're in line. It's very touching.
Yeah.
So
that's okay. We're here, bro.
We were in line.
Yeah.
And, dude, it was just like the clouds just like moved, and there's this light shining on me, and the joy and the happiness that I felt from prison, and like my darkest moment was one of the happiest days ever.
Wow.
Like it was like, I'm like, damn,
spiritual.
This has to, like,
this is God. This has to be God.
Definitely.
Yeah. Wow.
And then so I started devoting myself a lot more. However, when I got out, I wasn't so dedicated.
Right.
And then until my 20s, not that I went back to selling drugs, but I just wasn't in that place.
Right. The lack of discipleship
exactly
kind of got you off track.
Off track.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't really surrounded by, like, everybody that I was surrounded by was, didn't go to church. So it was hard to do something to go do it on my own without having that brothership.
Right. And that discipleship.
Exactly, that guide. Until I met my fiance.
Wow.
Ooh.
He who finds
a wife.
He who finds a wife.
And it's
that's Proverbs 18.
And it's not. It wasn't so much. What's wild is that I feel like we both kind of needed each other, because she wasn't going to church either, but we kind of just together fell into that place without even talking about it.
Wow.
It's almost like we met and we just.
Yeah.
I went to church one day by myself. And then after that, we just started going together.
What church is this again? I'm sorry.
Christ Fellowship in Westlake.
Oh, Christ Fellowship in the new
one.
The new campus on Westlake.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a new one.
Yeah.
This is my shocked face.
Yeah. Yeah, that church is planting churches all over Palm Beach County.
Yeah, dude. So that story is actually a lot longer, but
but
thank you for sharing, man. That's powerful.
Very emotional, and a lot of people didn't know that, so it was hard to tell that story right now.
Yeah.
Well, again, we appreciate you.
We appreciate that. I got a follow-up question, though. When you said that you felt the happiest in a place where you were stripped from your freedom, and you were essentially a prisoner at a max prison, when you felt the joy, was it something that you've never felt before? Like, because you know how when we grow up, we feel happy when we get the gift that we wanted, or the video game that we always wanted, and we feel that happiness.
Way happier. I had a tear.
So you had some type of physical, but also spiritual reaction to what you were witnessing before your eyes.
Yeah.
So take us through that. Like, how was it? Like, and how did you approach the remainder stint of your prison time? Like, how was your approach different after that encounter with the Lord?
Dude, so prison was very negative for me till that point, and I felt like I was there for a reason. And I started seeing it a lot more positive.
Wow.
So that moment was dude, I just never felt it. It was like a physical feeling,
right?
You know, like it's like not just opened your mind, but I almost felt like you just like opened up, and it's like just.
So did you feel like a peace over you? Did you feel like at peace?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because the Bible does say that when you do have these encounters with the Lord and you go to the Lord, you are giving a peace that surpasses your own understanding. So I feel like that's something that you were experiencing in your remainder.
Yeah, I definitely felt more at peace because I felt a lot less defensive as well. So I felt safer.
Yeah.
At peace.
Yeah.
Definitely at peace.
Yeah. Did you deal with a lot of violence? Because you said that you got into fights early on when you were in high school. Did you just felt like you were a very angry child for whatever reason? Where did that anger come from? Was it because of a rebellion? Was it because
it wasn't really anger, to be honest with you. I just felt I don't know if it was the fighter in me. I had my dad was a boxer.
Okay.
So it wasn't anger.
Yeah.
To be honest, my next question was like, is it 90s teen angst? Is that where it came from?
Yeah.
That was a thing too.
Yeah. I mean, and because I remember I used to fight and not even be angry.
Really? So you were kind of approaching fighting as a sport. And so if you needed to stand up to a bully maybe, or just stand up for yourself.
That's kind of how it started, to be honest. In elementary school, we had a bully in the school. I remember his name was Matt.
You could always remember the bullies, right?
Yeah, his name was Matt. Oh, man. And we were in line to get food. He was just pushing kids out the way and getting in front of him until he got to me. And he pushed me out the way. And I like punched him. And the kids stopped bullying everybody in school.
Okay.
So in my school, in high school, it was kind of the same way. It was such a bad high school. There was gangs. There's all of this. Yeah. That you would just form a clique. Yeah. And, those bullies would just come. Right. And then just try to defend people. Because we had kids that were in, what was it, ESC, I think is what they were called. ESC,
Yeah, ESC.
Yeah.
And, dude, I was cool with everybody. I was even cool with them, and like people would pick on them, and then that's like I saw like, like, what are you doing? So
the fighter in you wanted to fight and stand up
defend
them and stuff like that. Gotcha. I thought it was just coming from a place of anger.
No.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't even anger.
Okay.
Because we even as it wasn't just in school, even in soccer, our team was known for fighting. Wow. We had to change colors.
Wow.
Because all the refs in Florida knew us for fighting.
Wow. That's crazy.
So and I was on our travel team. So we went from yellow jerseys to, because we were the Palm Beach Hornets. Okay. So Hornets are yellow and black.
Black, right.
We went to gray. That's completely
not even
has nothing to do with Hornets. Just to
avoid,
because they always keep an eye on you.
Wow. Yeah. That's insane. That's amazing. That's a pretty amazing story. I know there's more to it, but I was just so curious because you kind of painted that encounter with the Lord very vividly. Like I see things in pictures. So when you were describing that encounter that you had with the Lord, I literally visioned like the skies parting ways, dude, and like the heavenly realms was shining down on you, and you're feeling the atmospheric change in the weather or the temperature, whatever it was. It's so supernatural, and that's what it was. And so I was just curious how you walked after that. Like, how did it make your remainder time that you had a lot easier, right?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
So
a lot easier.
So to just kind of button up this portion of the conversation for those that might be watching that are maybe dealing with something similar to you, those that are maybe struggling with the darkness and the dark thoughts, and maybe they just came out of prison and are trying to get themselves in line with faith, like what would you recommend them doing, and how you got to a place where this is what I want to dedicate myself to, and this is why I'm devoting myself to Christ? Like, what would you encourage that listener right now that may be struggling with that?
I feel that anything you do, whatever it is you're gonna do, whether it be to become a doctor, to become
a carpenter,
an attorney, a carpenter, you have to do it 100%. And if you don't do it 100%, it's hard to get that
reciprocated back to you. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So in prison, I had nothing else. You know what I mean? It was me, whole bunch of felons. I'm talking about murderers.
Right.
But the prison that I was in actually got FBI went in there because cops and prisoners were killing each other.
Wow.
So if anybody looks up Swanee CI, they can see how tough it was.
Yeah.
But so I had nothing to do but just give it 100%. And I feel that I felt that way because I was kind of not forced, but I feel I was in a place where I was just more focused and just gave 100% to it, and I got that reciprocation.
Wow. Back. You see that, kids? Give yourself 100% of yourself to the Lord, and He'll do some wonders in your life.
Well, that's it for the podcast. I'm
gonna but that's amazing, and we actually have here a pastor.
Shalom.
And that can speak to that. That can speak to that, and encourage people to not be afraid of the light, because it could get uncomfortable when you're in the fire. We sometimes confuse that fire with hell on earth, and you're being, punished and guilt tripped and all this negative isms that we feel when we're walking through that fire. But sometimes that fire isn't hell on earth. It's usually the purification of what the Lord is putting you through to purify you in that fire.
Have you ever watched a sword being made?
Yeah, it's
a cool process.
It's a cool show too.
I want to learn. They have it on Netflix. There's a show.
Yeah, there's a show. Have you seen that?
So I haven't seen it, but I've seen like a bunch of ways because it's really funny. It's really cool. There's many different ways to kind of make a sword, but the thing that helps make a sword is you need to have a lot of heat and a lot of pressure.
Right.
Okay, but the main things the main reasons why there needs to be so much heat and so much pressure is because it removes materials that you don't want. Because if you let those materials still reside in you, or reside in the sword, it becomes a brittle sword that can break easily during combat. Right? This one of the most famous swords in the world, the samurai sword. Right? It takes forever to make that sword. It takes forever to make that sword. But that sword is one of the deadliest, and it's a weapon that there are times they never even had to sharpen again. But that's because it went through this extended process of cleaning the sword, getting all the impurities out of the different metals that are in it, layering them. Because here's the thing: the metals they layer onto, they're actually folded and layered on top of each other and compressed together. So yes, you're gonna feel heat. You're gonna go through that, but almost in a weird way, misery actually makes you stronger. Yeah. And it really brings out the fact that you can't do anything, and that it's God who does everything for you.
Amen.
And so when you are going through the tough times, you're going to go through some rough and tough and dark times, but the reality is you're for those who are watching, you're looking at living proof. Someone who could have been killed. He was in an environment, but God brought him not just through it, but he cleansed him, if you will, cleansed you of a lot of things that were there before. Yeah, but that's also a testament to how much faith you have, because people still easily break under that.
Yeah, right. Still to this day, it's a struggle. Nobody's perfect.
Right. You have to wake up every day and choose. You do. You have to wake up every single day and choose to keep following Christ. Because there are sometimes I'm like, bro, I don't want to do this. Why? I could be doing 20 other things right now. Yeah. Why would but it's you wake up and you choose, but there is no greater life. Yeah. Than one following Christ.
Yeah. And even if you're listening now and you're like, well, I've never you don't understand. I've never been to prison, but I've been in a place where I got a divorce, and that put you in a really dark place. Whatever that dark place was, whatever life circumstances happened to you, whether it was a breakup, whether it's you losing your job, whether it is losing a loved one.
I'm gonna keep it going. So based on what he's saying, right? I want to go back to the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus is praying the night he gets betrayed, a couple of days before he's put on a cross.
Right.
He was crushed beyond belief. If you actually read the scripture, it says his soul was crushed. Now, that word that's used is used to describe when the process of when they actually crush olives, right? And you crush olives 3 times. Okay, so the first time you crush olives, like the olive oil that comes out, they use that for like religious ceremonies and things like that.
Anointings.
Right? Anointings and sacrifices, things like that. The second one is like your everyday olive oil, where like you use that to eat, to cook, and stuff like that. And then the final one is just this dark, dingy, just this disgusting, like it's almost unusable. What is it used for? Do you know what it's used for? To power the lamps that were in people's homes. Yeah. So when Jesus' soul was crushed 3 times, what did he become? Even after they broke his body, even after they tortured him, even after they ridiculed him, even after he went through all this stuff, went through the worst possible things a human can see up to death, and then was still killed, he became what?
The light.
The light of the world. And so whatever you're going through, Jesus has been there, bro.
Yeah.
Like, he's felt it. Like, you think, like, oh, man, I can't do it. I can't go on. It's like, yo, Jesus was in the exact same place.
Yeah.
He was in the same place. He felt it. He knows what it's like. Because he could have chose to not do it. He has legions of angels that a simple, just a word, a whisper, a thought, he could have come and just changed everything.
Right.
But he remained dedicated to what God had planned from the beginning of time. Right. A covenant that he was going to continue to honor, which is a covenant we should be honoring when we get into marriage. Yeah. So I'm going to bring that back around.
Yeah. No, seriously. And I know that we talked about marriage. We talked about a redemption story. We talked about coming into faith. And that's kind of like the theme that I talked about early on, like faith, relationship, marriage, faith, relationship, marriage. That was kind of like in my heart. It was stirring in my heart.
It's all interconnected.
Yeah, but it really is. And I like to listen to people with mega platforms, right? One person that did come to mind. You guys are familiar with Tyrese, right? He was in the Transformers. He was in he was in the Fast and the Furious.
Man, you wouldn't believe this. Yeah. He's got some funny one-liners. I love that guy.
Yeah, Tyrese.
I feel like I haven't seen him. Well, he was in the last Fast and the Furious.
He was in the last Fast and the Furious. He's also done smaller movies. Baby Boy. He starred in Baby Boy.
I quote him every day. No lie. The line from 2000 is like I said, we hungry.
Yeah.
I quote him every day.
So Tyrese has actually been very, very, very outspoken about his newfound faith. And he got on a podcast. Actually, do I still have that video? Maybe we can just tune in real quick.
Dude can sing too.
He could sing too because he's an R&B singer. That's how he started his career. And I think I was listening
hey Tyrese, if you ever listen to this podcast, which
I do have it
hard,
bro. Look, as you can see, I was actually watching the podcast. But this is what he said. Hold on a second. Let's see if I can rewind.
Can you find the part?
Yeah.
We're professionals, everybody.
Tips for wealthy people to get married. What are the worst parts of the divorce?
I love BetterHelp. Therapy has truly changed my life. I've been in and out of therapy with BetterHelp for...
All right, come on, let's get that.
Real therapy.
I don't really want to talk about the worst parts of the divorce. I want to try and answer the incentive to be married, because I think I'm really more so heavy towards that than just dealing with the
financial
the divorce is fucked up.
But the divorce, the stories that we see from men about divorce, as well as the divorce rate, is what's deterring people from marriage.
I feel homeless without my wife. I never experienced the sanctuary of love. We were a world within a world. Like, whatever the fuck is up and down.
Excuse the language, guys.
Bubble, and
hide your
it
kids.
can never be popular.
You can bleep it.
Like, it's good to see what other people have and what they're doing. We just two weirdos, and we in this bubble, and it's just us. And then he who finds a wife finds a good thing and favor from the Lord. You don't even understand the concept of that until you get married. Like, okay, well, I had a career. I was blessed. I think it's going. The level of favor is when you can't even put words to what you're witnessing God do.
But isn't God doing that with love?
God is doing it with love because you're in love. But see, God doesn't even recognize relationships until you're married. Because when you get married, as Rev Run would say, it says you may now kiss the bride. This is where because you wasn't supposed to be kissing and fucking and doing nothing prior to. Wasn't supposed to live together. Wasn't supposed to do nothing. Mm-hmm. So you may now kiss the bride is your first kiss. So there is no advice that, and I don't know the Bible like that inside out, but I don't really know that there's a lot of advice about what you're supposed to be doing to coexist with your better half in the Bible, because God recognizes relationships from the point of marriage. Right. So he who finds a wife finds a good thing and favor from the Lord. So as blessed as we are as men,
married because God going.
No. You're not getting married looking forward to what he's going to do. But I'm telling you, I've had a vision to build this and do that. And I want to start a venture capital fund, and whatever your visions might be. The moment you get married, what you've been waiting on, what you've been having 20 private lunches and dinners, it just all starts happening back to back to back. And you're sitting back and you're going, I know one thing. I'm handsome. I got charm. I got charisma. I can keep a motherfucker's attention when I'm talking. I can sell water to a fucking well. But can anybody explain to me how from the moment I got married, all of the breakthroughs, all of the things that I have been in this holding pattern trying to get just ended up happening? And
that's crazy. Yeah, round of applause to that real quick.
You're gonna have to really you're gonna have to bleep it. I'm gonna be real quick. I think I love you, but you got some editing to do.
Yeah, but he spoke from off the heart. He's a very passionate man.
You can tell he was right there. And I almost see in the place of not frustration, but I don't even say the word passionate. Like he would tell he was not frustrated with the questions, but like you can tell he was like wanting to go in even more. Mm-hmm. And I feel like he was getting kind of frustrated with them because they weren't really like getting it.
Well, to give you context, because I saw the
I have not seen any of that.
I saw the entire podcast in its entirety, and in that portion of the conversation, the host of the podcast was asking Tyrese, so how did you deal with your divorce? Because he had a very public divorce because it was spewed out in TMZ and the shade rooms of the world and the TMZs of the world and all these other platforms that spill the gossip and run with certain narratives and paint a picture of Tyrese that really wasn't him when it was happening in real time, was really frustrating with him because now his ex-wife now is asking for $20,000 of child support, which is ridiculous because no baby needs $20,000 a month, especially if you're, even if you were a Hollywood executive or a Hollywood A-lister, which Tyrese is.
$20,000.
So Tyrese is considered an A-lister.
I feel like,
but $20,000, and not only that, bro. Tyrese's ex-wife is a lawyer, and she makes $100,000+ a year. Okay, bro, so that's why he has frustration when the divorce conversation stirs up, and that's why he got passionate about. I'm not going to talk about divorce. I am actually going to talk about marriage because he's actually looking to get married again. Because as he said there, I feel homeless. I feel homeless without a wife.
Yeah,
I feel homeless without being in a marriage.
That's a deeply mature response to that, because he could have easily gone off.
Right.
He could have easily been like, this sucks. But he was just like, no. I'm not focusing on the bad.
Yeah.
I want everyone to see the good.
The good.
And I'm like, where is more of that in our society? Because, I mean, even with like other podcasts that I kind of see throughout, it's like a lot of it focuses on the bad. Oh, hey, like you were like talking about a girl. It's like, oh, you were an OF girl. You were, you slept around. You did this, and it's like, oh, but she's changed her life around. It's like, well, you still did this. It's like, but why can't we praise her for like turning her life
around? Yeah,
like wanting to be a better person.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we live in a society where they define you of your past.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, you're that drug dealer that I used to know. Yeah. And you're filthy, and you're this, and you're that, or you're that womanizer, or you're this guy, you're that guy, and they define you using. It's almost like weaponizing your old life.
Believe it or
and
not,
weaponizing it against you.
So have you experienced that at all? I'm just curious.
No, I personally haven't. I feel like because I surround myself with positive people, and I have. whoever was in my life back then are mostly acquaintances, except for a number of them that have also turned their life around. So I don't get that a lot.
Okay.
But what I was gonna say is some of the strongest people I've met were in prison. You got to think the people that are in prison, they're not your normal people,
right?
You know, they don't walk the line. They're usually you find a lot of artists in there. You find a lot of people whose minds are not in your normal realm of activities.
Yeah, so they're probably outside the spectrum.
Yes, outside the spectrum. So you meet extraordinary people in there, very strong, and a lot of people that walk the line and are very in their faith. So lots of them. You see a lot of that in prison. Contrary to people's belief.
Yeah. Does that mostly happen because of prison, or was that something they had before they came in?
I think I wasn't there long enough to.
Okay.
I wouldn't know how to answer that.
Yeah. Okay.
But in my case, it was. I feel
is a catalyst to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel my brother is currently in prison. He's in Martin County Correctional. So it's not a max, but it's considered a medium. But he's already seen people get stabbed up, poked up, reprimanded. He's seen a lot of stuff in his first year there. And my brother, for those that don't really know my brother wasn't a man of faith. Didn't really believe in a high power. He didn't want to subscribe to that stuff because he just saw the Bible as a book filled with mystical stories and creatures and characters. He saw it as that. And then it's funny that you said what you were saying and what you shared, because my brother experienced that too. He experienced an encounter with the Lord in pieces. He didn't have that huge revelation that you had with the clouds opening up, the light coming to your eyes, the temperature changing. But my brother felt it in crumbs. Like he would pick up a book, he would start reading. He would get involved in groups, because they allow people to go in groups if you let the prison know that you want to practice a faith, they'll provide that for you. Yeah. So the reason my brother had ulterior motives, because he didn't want to be in a small cell.
He was kind of seeing it as
his escape.
Yeah.
But praise God,
do something different,
right? But praise God that he used even that to encounter my brother, because once my brother started going to chapel, because they would meet every Thursday for chapel and service, and a book Bible study on Thursday nights, the more that he started going to chapel, the more he started feeding his spirit. And he would tell me, hey, I was listening to worship music, and they brought out the worship band, and this song came on, and I felt the Lord on me. I was like, what? He's like, bro, I was singing a worship song that I've never heard before, but because the lyrics was on the screen, I was able to sing it out, and it made me cry. And I was like, well, that's the Holy Spirit. And now my brother's in a place where he's a believer. Yeah. He no longer has a belief that this is fake, this is make believe, this is not for me. He's more like, wow, God is real, and he's moving in my life, even in this place that I would never thought of encountering God, in this dark place.
I want to go from there, because I think if anybody's ever lost, you can go to the Bible, and there's something that's in there that's going to help you. Right. And even if you're not a Christian, there's so much stuff that you can get. So just read it.
Yeah, like especially the Proverbs.
If you need guidance. Right. And I think that's what happens. I think that's what happens to a lot of people in prison. There's not a lot of things you can do. You know, some prisons only have so much books. Yeah. And the Bible is given to everybody in there. And there's always a priest in prison. Yeah. A pastor that comes and you can get a Bible, and it's somebody different that that you can connect with, because I mean, there's some guards in there that are really
pretty harsh.
Harsh and crappy and negative.
My brother would tell me.
Treat people horrible.
I went to go visit him a couple of weeks ago, and he was telling me about that.
So some people turn to that just because of that. Not necessarily because they believe in God. Mm-hmm. They eventually do. Right. But it's because they started reading the Bible, because it is a guidance. Yeah. So anybody lost, I feel like they can go into that book, and they can go into the Bible and get something out of it. Right. That can guide you and put you back into focus.
It's still going?
Yeah, I started again.
Okay. No, yeah, absolutely, and that's something that I feel is a good environment. As crazy as it may sound, it's a good environment to be in to encounter the Lord. Because look at the Apostle Paul, right? When he was in prison, he wrote most of the New Testament in prison.
A good amount
in prison, bro. Like the Apostle Paul in prison wrote a good amount of the New Testament that we read today.
You can actually go to where he was imprisoned. Mm-hmm. I've actually been there. Mm-hmm. It is incredible to stand and be like, this book that I read pretty much every day, or whatever. Mm-hmm. Something what I base a lot of my faith off of was written.
Yeah, so I think it's a powerful biblical experience, and of course we don't wish anybody to go to prison to find the Lord. It's just sometimes.
Hey kids, you don't need to go to prison to find Jesus.
Right? But sometimes that's someone's story. It was obviously your story. It's currently my brother's story. My brother has unfortunately many more years to go before he's out, before he comes home. But I do have the convenience that the prison that he's at is not that far away. So I do meet with my brother once, maybe twice a month, depending on my schedule, to go see him, have a sit down with him, awesome. Chop it up with him, talk Bible, talk Jesus, talk life, talk how he's doing, how he's processing things. He'll tell me prison stories, of course. Like he'll tell me like what he saw the other day. Yeah, those are endless, bro. And my brother's such a comedic. It has a bit of a dark humor that he makes it palatable for me, because some of these stories are pretty scary, and I don't know how I would be able to. I guess you won't know until you're actually in it, and I thank God that I'm not in that situation. But I do pray for my brother, and I do pray for his protection, that God may shield him, may God protect him and shield him from the things that can go on in prison. The mishaps that can happen, the encounters with other prisoners that may happen, the prison politics that people subscribe to, and things of that nature. So he'll tell me all these stories, and the difference prior to him exercising his faith and his belief in God is like the polar opposite. When he first got in, he was very angry, very violent, very frustrated, and mad at the world. Yeah. Once he got delivered and started going to chapel and going to church, now he's more at peace. Mm-hmm. Now he's more into terms that, hey, I know God's got me, and I know that God has something for me after this, because this is not going to define me. Yeah. He's going to use my story to help free other people. And I tell them this because I want to affirm him. I also want to encourage him. Mm-hmm. I tell my brother, I was like, dude, there's people right now, bro, that are waiting for you. There's people waiting for you, bro. We don't know those people yet, but it's going to come into fruition that there's people waiting for you. I'm getting emotional now. Damn. Sorry. It's emotional. Yeah, but there is people, and I tell this to him all the time, because I always want to remind him. I'm like, dude, there is people waiting for you. You may not know it now, but there is people waiting for you, because your story is gonna free people. Your story is gonna free people from depression, free people from suicide, free people from
I came here
with
precisely
that with that in mind. Yeah,
with that in mind. It's I feel like from a dark place you can definitely connect with somebody also in a dark place, and let them know that there is a light. You just keep walking forward.
Yeah, because the beautiful thing about the Lord is that He can use our chaotic, dark stories to bless others. And I believe that your story that you shared today is going to bless someone that's going to listen to this podcast, which will come out Wednesday night at 9 p.m. for those that stuck around for the hour and 20 minutes that we've been podding. Thank you for tagging along and going on a ride of emotions and just dialogue in this pod.
Actually, in the back of my head, I'm like, I think it's funny how we've paralleled marriage and prison into one podcast.
Yeah.
And didn't associate the two together.
Yeah.
Because I feel, kind of going back to that marriage thing, but I always heard it from comedians like, oh, like marriage is like prison, marriage is like prison, and I'm like that is like such a negative thing to say about something beautiful.
But faith is the glue. Yeah, faith is the glue, though. Like we find faith in relationship, like you found your faith, or you reestablish your faith through your relationship, and now she's your fiance, soon to be your wife.
Hey.
But you also found faith in prison. And I wanted to talk about faith today, and I wanted to talk about marriage today because of the narratives that are being pushed today. Like we heard Tyrese speak, we heard Pat speak earlier about feminism and stuff, and how that is deteriorating the institution of marriage and the concept and how it's approached. So this podcast was very special to me because not only did we get great content and great story, but I feel like I could only speak for myself. It did take me on an emotional roller coaster because I was feeling a little bit when you were sharing. Because I was a little afraid of that. Yeah, I was like, oh, I'm feeling a little emotional because you're being emotional. But that's what we need more of. We need more men willing to be vulnerable with one another and transparent with one another, because I do believe that in transparency there is transformation. So we need more men to be together like this, lock arms with each other and live life with one another and be there with one another. Sure. So that being said, guys, like if you are a man and you identify as such,
I would say it is 2023.
Yeah, it is 2023, so we got to speak a certain way. No, I'm kidding. But we encourage you to lock arms with those guys around you. Positive influences. The right voices in the right spaces will get you to the places and spaces that you need to be, that God wants you to be. That being said, bro, you're more than welcome to come back. I always tell people,
please come back.
Yeah, I always tell people there's people that come back, and like Gabe, for example, he came for one. He thought it was going to be a one-off.
He wasn't done, but he came back.
Yeah, but he came back.
I was super nervous because I felt it was going to be a very emotional podcast. Yeah, which it was.
Well, here's the thing.
Because I've never talked about it.
Yeah.
I mean, Javi and I talk about it all the time. Like the emotional podcasts are what the people want to hear.
Yeah,
they want to hear
the authenticity,
the deep. They want to hear like the fact that we're getting emotional. They want to like feel that, because here's the thing: you can't just like Tyrese. Like you could feel it. It's different when you feel it. Like your encounter with Christ, it's different when you feel it. And people can feel this podcast, especially for the day oneers or people who just recently, it's like, it doesn't matter. I mean, even kids nowadays, they can tell what's fake, what's not.
Right.
Yeah. Like I get when you're on TikTok or Instagram, like people who kind of like talk a certain way, you're like, oh my gosh, you're so fake, please stop talking. It's like, hey, this happened today. It's like, well, no, scroll. Because I want the authentic like person who wants to like be like, hey guys, like something really bad happened or something, like I want, like people want to feel that, because we're gonna go back to relationships. It's like a lot of that is kind of lost in relationships as well.
Yeah,
and so you coming on and being vulnerable is like the most powerful thing, because now that Javi has helped. Now that God has blessed Javi with a platform like he has, like this, like there's a reason I keep doing this. Not because I want recognition. I could give two craps less. My name's going to fade into time. But the way that you make people feel and your story is going to change so many lives.
Yeah.
So many lives. So thank you for coming on this podcast. And thank you for
being
vulnerable and sharing that with us, because it's not easy. But now that your first one's done, now it does get easier.
It does get easier. When you come back, bro, it's like kicking it with your homies, and we can just talk about whatever. You know what I mean? So
we hit record, and sometimes we don't even tell people.
Yeah, yeah. So you're always welcome, bro. I think you bring value to this pod. So
100%.
You're more than welcome to come back. I tell everybody this, from the Gabes of the world to obviously Tyler to Chris. to Franklin, to Diana, to Vanessa,
to Diana again,
Christine, you name it. I tell all these people that are on my pod to always come back. And 9 times out of 10, bro, Christine and Kayla and Franklin, they come back, bro. So you're part of that crew too, dude. You could always come back, and we could always chop it up and talk about whatever is on the trending topics.
It's fun, and I had a lot of fun. So
yeah, for sure.
I mean, I wasn't expecting to have as much fun as I did opening up like that.
Yeah.
You know, from such a dark place.
Yeah.
But just knowing that I could possibly help somebody that's walking that dark patch is keep moving forward. You're gonna reach.
Yeah.
You know,
for sure. That's awesome.
The light is brightest in the dark.
Yes. And that being said,
boom.
Be the light, fellas and gals. If you haven't subscribe.
What are you doing?
What are you doing? Just subscribe. The links are going to be in the description. TikTok, Instagram, all my social media platforms. If you are an audio listener, I'm on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So go ahead and share those links on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. But we love you guys. Until next time. Peace.